Hi, everyone. My name is Jeffrey Strauss. I'm the founder of the Leadership Bootcamp, a curriculum based leadership skills training organization, and I've led some of the most incredible teams and most incredible people at some of the most recognized companies in the world. You can learn more about the Leadership Bootcamp at leadershipbootcamp.com and some of my other work and research interests at jeffstrauss.net. In this edition of Leader to Leader, I want to talk about the importance of attitude. So, if you've watched my other content available on my Leadership Bootcamp YouTube channel and my website, jeffreystrauss.net, you may have heard me say that when I hire someone for my team, I hire them for attitude and aptitude. Certainly, technical acumen is important, but it's not the most important. For many reasons, attitude and aptitude are far more important than a specific domain related skill set. Here's why. First, every company is going to have their own run books, processes, standard operating procedures, and so forth for how they do things. Where one company does an activity one way, another company might do the very same activity a very different way. What's important and what's different is not the activity, it's the environment in which the activity exists. So, while having a fundamental knowledge of the activity may be important, what's more important is the aptitude of the individual to apply contextual information to its execution. You can see this in action in my podcast interview with Evgeny Kim and Adil Mansour, where I gave a mock interview to Adil and I focus far less on his technical acumen, which is very clear, and more on his ability to be self reflective, focus on self improvement, applying his knowledge to unknown situations, and other soft skills. But what I really want to focus on in this leader to leader is the attitude part. This is a brief glimpse into a much larger topic that I'm going to cover in a future training video on resilience and mindset. But I've wanted to talk about the importance of a positive attitude for quite some time, and my colleague Nikki was the inspiration for this video. Nikki has been on my team for several months now, and during our one on ones early on, I discovered that she coaches her daughter's football team. That's soccer, not pigskin. Nikki's in the UK. I've grilled Nikki on what it's like to coach young people in a competitive team sport because, as someone who researches leadership, I'm deeply interested in learning from Nikki's experiences as a coach. She can tell you that she's probably sick of me asking how her team is doing several times a month, and for a long time, which she permitted me to share, the team wasn't doing very well. They had been training for a while in a different environment than they were used to. The pitch was smaller, which only allowed for fewer players on the field at any given time. They weren't winning consistently, which certainly has a demotivating influence on younger athletes. But Nikki's a great coach, kept her young women motivated, and they kept playing despite the difficulties. When they didn't play the way Nikki knew they could, she'd give them straightforward feedback like any good coach would, and encouraged and motivated them also. So these young women had a personal interest in the sport. They were highly intrinsically motivated, and we won't get into the science, but personal interest is a very strong motivator. But what happened recently, and what Nikki shared with me earlier this week, is the real kicker, pun very much intended. A few of the young women on Nikki's team had attitudes that weren't necessarily team oriented. They were more self focused and almost self righteous. And those young individuals transferred off of Nikki's team and were replaced with athletes with much more positive and team oriented attitudes. Within a very short time span, Nikki's team beat a team who last season won their game 10-1 against Nikki's team and regularly beat them in previous games. So the story obviously speaks for itself, but there are leadership and skills lessons to take away from it. First, this is why high quality relationships are important. I'm lucky that my general vibe is interest in other people, and I love learning about and being inspired by people's non work related endeavors just as much, but probably more, than their work related endeavors. If Nikki and I hadn't developed the type of relationship that we have, I might have never heard this story, which she shared with me at 7:30 a.m. on a meeting with me, which I set, so I will not hold it against Nikki for sharing at that ungodly hour. And it really set my day off on the right foot. So, the importance of having that type of relationship is really critical, and you can learn more about developing high quality relationships in my lecture series, which is available on my website. Second, the importance of modeling. Good behavior is emulated, especially when people are rewarded by positive outcomes that come about as a result of the good behavior. Nikki's team had a rough time last season, but the adjustment of attitudes on the team showed nearly immediate benefit, and the feeling of winning in a competitive sport, especially for young adults and especially against a team who has bested you in the past, is really indescribable. There are long term benefits here too because the confidence built from winning can create perseverance and resilience for the times the team doesn't win, and they're more likely to remain highly engaged until their next victory, and the cycle reinforces itself. So, how do you apply this in a leadership context? First, check out my series on teams available on my website. It's a multi part series, and in that series, I talk about the importance of interpersonal dynamics on teams and how to cultivate those dynamics. In short, encourage cooperative problem solving, encourage teammates to solicit help from one another, and regularly share successes and failures as a team to develop esprit de corps and reinforce bonds. Second, model interest and engagement yourself as a leader. Demonstrate enthusiasm on a day to day basis because what is modeled is emulated. It may not take right away, but it will strengthen your resilience as a leader if you continue to model interest and engagement even in difficult times. And remember that they say that if you're feeling down and you smile, you'll feel better. The same goes for enthusiasm. You can hype yourself up, and in doing so, you can hype up your team also. I hope you liked this anecdote, and thank you, Nikki, for sharing your story with me and allowing me to share it with others. I hope you, as a listener and a viewer, found this useful. To learn more about leadership skills training, check out leadershipbootcamp.com, and you can find my lecture series, my podcast, the Leadership Bootcamp podcast, and my writing on leadership at jeffstrauss.net. Thanks so much for your time.